Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh, everybody. Welcome to the SOS, the shout out show with me, your host, Preacher Moss. We have a joyful, but we have a sorrowful occasion. Some of you have seen my message that I left earlier on Instagram. Some of you have responded. Yes, here in America, we have lost an icon. We have lost a person or an identity that has been in our community for a number of years. When I say a number of years, I'm talking about over 32 years until the Lord called him home. The Lord, in this case, was Viacom. And the death of which I speak is the show Cops. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when your show is through? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when there's no show from you? Now, brothers and sisters, let me give you some background a little bit. I am 53 years old. The show Cops died at the age of 32, which means the show Cops was around, brothers and sisters, before a lot of you were born. You grew up thinking that that was normal television. I'm here to tell you it was not. And as well as Cops dying, there was another death. That show was Live PD. Live PD, you have some explaining to do because I believe that you have some footage of yet another black man dying on TV, not only yelling, "I can't breathe." I saw the footage, but he yells out to the police, "I have congestive heart failure." Film at 11, check that one out. But let me talk about Cops. Cops have been on television so long, brothers and sisters, that when they said that Cops was being canceled, I didn't realize they were even doing new shows. For the last 15 years, I thought I was watching reruns. These were actual shows. And what did Cops remind you of? The Cops reminded you that they were going to keep a foot on your neck, even on television. Through all the law and order days of Bush and Clinton and heck, Obama, Cops just seemed to trudge on through every day, because it was a syndication. Every day, it showed you just a little bit of what America thought about you, and they used the police to do it. We're talking about the disenfranchisement of blacks, Latinos, and even white people. And I'm not saying they were the best white people. I'm talking about white people who've been smoking so long, all their uppers are gone. Honey, I love you. You love that pipe. But let me keep my focus here. The show Cops is gone. A lot of people don't realize when the show Cops was originally designed, brothers and sisters, it was designed as a peeking show. When I say a peeking show, it means it had this mantra. It was part of a program. I remember specifically, it was called Crime in America. And I'm trying to remember the host. It might have even been Geraldo Rivera. Don't quote me. But it was a ride-along show. It was a ride-along show. When I mean ride-along, you, the viewer, were ride along with the police to all these different places where crime was happening. Now, we're so dumb and conditioned back in the day, we thought that, man, the cops sure are good because they can figure out where the crime is happening before it even happens. No, brothers and sisters, that was a scope of demographics and a dope of census and also a dose of, what am I going to say, zoning. They looked at zoning to realize where crime was heaviest, and they tapped it into when the calls were made and the cops would be on their way. Isn't it interesting that people can figure out, crime is probably going to happen here. But it shouldn't be a far-fetched notion because people sit around and go, I better build a prison because I believe there's going to be this many inmates here. Yes, brothers and sisters, Cop was one of the inspirational ideas of catching people in scenarios whereby they looked at their surroundings, they made sure the surroundings looked like where we were at that point in time to remind you, brothers and sisters, to remind you that these were your circumstances. In a way, Cops was one of the biggest disenfranchisement television programs on TV historically. It let people know that there's always going to be, for lack of a better word, martial law. And they did martial law through the police uniforms, tasing, all that. The idea of people to run away from cops, cops to run away from people. It was the worst situation, stereotypes. Oddly enough, Cops, brothers and sisters, was, oddly enough, the most culturally diverse television show they've ever had, up to the point we had these riots here just recently during the COVID period. I want to give this some context. I saw the first prototype for what would be Cops. It was a thing, like I said, it was a ride-along show. This is why I remember this show. It was one of my best jokes I ever wrote because it was so subtle. And I don't mean to speak ill about the dead, about cops dying, but damn it, here goes. They would ride along, and it wasn't as sophisticated as it is now. They would ride along, and they would actually respond to a call on the radio, which meant that they had to keep moving around. So Crime in America was like 15, 16 different things. It was a huge operation. It cost a lot of money. Cops centralized that and said, we can put the crime in one area and run the cameras. This is the beautiful part of it. I remember watching the show, and it was a Crime in America. It was like a spotlight show. This is when they had things like Inside Edition, so little shows like this. I remember this particular show, and I've been trying to find the videotape for years. They actually busted two brothers on the show, Cops, while they were watching the show, Cops. That means they were watching the show as the police kicked their door in, and it's almost like boom, 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 boom. Who's at the door? I don't know. Let me go see. And that's how they got busted. Okay. The other point, and a very, 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 very serious point, brothers and sisters, was at that time when the show actually came on, it was an informational show. What happened throughout the years is it morphed into an icon. Let me put a picture in your head. Let me give some shout outs too. Big J, my main man. Nuri, good to have you. Yes, brother, thank you so much. Appreciate the love. Yes, we're going to get deeper into it. And this is my brother from yesterday. I miss you, but Mikhail, thank you so much for tuning into the show. Okay, listen, let me break this down to you. The show Cops has been around so long that we actually think that it is a part of everyday society. It frames policing. Listen to what I'm saying. It frames policing. The idea that the police could be intrusive, in the idea of not just being intrusive, but also wrapped around the idea that they were right. That they were right. Policing was right. Policing was right. Policing was to the point where it can't be questioned. Policing was above the law. Systematically, we are now having to fight laws that allow us to what? Prosecute police. Cops was one of the templates for that because it solidified in America's mind that our law enforcement people could do no wrong. They could do no wrong. If you do any kind of comparison study with the show Cops, and you look at issues of police brutality, things like that, it didn't go down. It didn't have a premise. When you watch television, if you think about this, all right, what's going on, little brother, Last guy? Keep it simple. That's how I'm feeling, brother. That's how I'm feeling. But the show Cops, brothers and sisters, this is the most amazing thing I thought about. They were the first, hear me now, they were the first body cam. Cops was the first body cam, except they didn't have a body cam. You know what they had? They had production people who would follow them when they went to, quote unquote, serve justice, fight crime, maintain the rule of the law. That's what they did. And so now when I sit back, it's a little ill. I sound like all the way from Indonesia. When I sit back now, it's rather sinister, brothers and sisters, because I'll admit, Cops to me at a certain point in time, particularly as a comedian, it was entertainment. It gave me some of my best bits. I got hired by Damon Wayans doing my best Cops bit off the stage of the Laugh Factory in I want to say 1998. Just that big. The nuance of it. Talking about the neighborhood. Talking about the Asian person that gets stereotyped as a store owner. And I used to say, you know what you never see? You never see an Asian crack dealer. I used to say that. And they always had the black person who was always upset and agitated. Hi, how are you, sir? What you mean how I'm doing? It was that dude. And then they always had the black guy who didn't care what the police said, and that would require them to go to commercial break. You've seen this before. Sir, could you talk to me? I ain't going nowhere. Sir, could you go? Shit, I know my rights. We'll be right back after these messages. And then he come back and be all tame. I like police. But don't let me digress. I'm enjoying this Janazah. I'm enjoying this eulogy because there are going to be some more eulogies. Well, Cobbs is dead. Live PD is dead. But be careful because First 48 is out there. And First 48 is just as cultural as Cops was. First 48 is interesting because basically they teach people when you're watching First 48 that you need to tell. You need to tell, you need to snitch. And it tells you that police work does not work unless somebody snitches. All right, now I'm not going into this whole thing, snitches get stitches, is not my point. It's the fact that people can be put in situations, scenarios. The most important part of First 48 is the interview room because nobody ever has a lawyer. Cops, in and of itself, cultural icon. I'm going to tell you why. We move from the idea of information about cops to the idea of entertainment about cops and what they do to somewhere along the line, we began to fetishize the idea of blacks, Latinos, poor, Native American, underprivileged being arrested, being put in check, being subjugated, being arrested. And we loved it. Now, was I sad that Cobbs was killed? And it wasn't killed, brothers and sisters, like, it wasn't killed by the power of the people. Viacom realized that if we put this show out and people realize what we did, we're going to wind up like the CEO of CrossFit. Nobody's going to deal with us. Nobody's going to deal with our product. Viacom, my hat's off to you. I salute you. Upside down like Benny Hill. Not a real salute. Upside down like Benny Hill. Because you're smart. You know the pressure points of what people are going to take. You clearly knew that another episode of Cops through the label of Viacom would be tragic and people would jump on you. Now you look like a hero. You killed your problem and you present yourself as a hero. And brothers and sisters, I don't want to be ill. Speaking of Viacom, I don't know their intentions. But I know business. And I know if we had a protest about cops in a situation in times where everybody's protesting about what? Cops. And what? Police brutality. Well, guess what's going to happen, folks? That's going to be another show gone. They're probably going to replace it with another Trump rally. And who will be in the audience? Cops. All right, so I'm going to stop. That was wrong. That was ill of me. Please forgive me. I'm in a state of grief, brothers and sisters. My show is gone. That show's been on for 32 years. I'm talking about it like a person. Real talk, 32 years in any other situation in human life, we would be bawling. Gone too soon, gone too soon. But in television life, I'm here to tell you, brothers, I think the only other show that's run longer than that is 60 Minutes. And I don't know. But Cops was one of the longest running shows in television history. 32 years in its eternity. It might as well be 132 years. You might as well have been watching that show on the radio. But it's 32 years, brothers and sisters, of false and negative perceptions. It's 32 years of everybody turning around. Yes, The Simpsons. I think that they came out at the same time. Thank you, Doug. The Simpsons. I think 60 Minutes, but 60 Minutes has been running longer. But yeah, 60 Minutes, The Simpsons, and yes, Cops. Okay, but listen, back to my point. Hey, what's going on, Mom, son? Mom's got a joke, man. Maybe now a show following cops go to jail. That's funny. I like that one. Can I use that? I'm gonna take it because we're related. Look, but I'm talking about the long-term effects, brothers and sisters, of day in, day out. I remember when Cops was on a Friday and you would watch it, and it was statistic. You know what it was? Bad boys, what you want to do. It was interesting, brothers and sisters, that they used a Jamaican tune, a reggae tune, because it's almost disarming. Like they never use a banjo. No. No, they didn't do it. They used, I'm trying to remember the group that actually did that song. If they got paid on commission for that song, they are billionaires right now. But my point is, they use the idea of bad boys, what you doing, what you gonna do when they come for you. That come for you was not necessarily about law enforcement. And we loved the song. We made jokes about it. I know comedians that did whole sets on Cops. I'm one of them. What I'm realizing now, and what I've realized when I started watching the show Cops, is that I was feeding into this fetishizing about black bodies, brown bodies being arrested. And the thing that you have to be careful about, because they canceled the show Cops, but I didn't hear anything about reruns. The show was already in syndication, but I didn't hear anything then. It won't be renewed for another season, but there's a good opportunity. There's a good chance out there. I'm going to check. I could be wrong, but there's a good chance, all real talk, that the show is still going to be renewed. Okay, they got some people on here. Inner Circle, thank you, Mohammed, and thank you, Doug. I didn't want to go try to figure out on my computer right now because I probably cut the show off because I'm clumsy like that. Mohammed, thank you for coming to the show. Doug as well. And let me get some shout outs here. But the show Cops, brothers and sisters, it's still in reruns. I had a joke one time where the setup was I was watching Cops by the window, by the bay window, and I had it really loud. And my mom said, boy, cut that noise off. Cut that Cops off. And I cut it off. And she came back 15 minutes later. She goes, I thought I told you to cut that show off. I'm like, Mom, I'm watching it through the window. That's real life. So as we move forward, brothers and sisters, let us not be lax and let us not be overlooking the things that are around us. It should not take a George Floyd for a Cops show to be laid to rest. Not any disrespect to Mr. Floyd, but there are a lot of things that need to be laid to rest. When we're talking about shows like this, there are things on right now on television I don't even watch because I can tell just by the tenor of the first 4 or 5 lines that this is not going to work out well. This is not something I'm going to agree with. Even the show Cops, when it first came on, I said, what's the hookup? I said, how do they always know, brothers and sisters, where to go for crime? And then there was an election. And the interesting thing about this election was they knew all the Black and Latino votes were. This is in Long Beach, when I was living in Long Beach. They knew all the Blacks and Latino votes were by downtown. And whenever you go to the polling place, you know what they saw? I saw a heavy presence of law enforcement. And they weren't on the show Cops. And they weren't singing a song. I think one of the things I always remember about the show Cops, if it's a good thing, I don't know if they meant to do it or not, but they didn't discriminate. They showed you Black life, Black strife, Latino strife, but they also showed you something that America didn't want you to see. And that was the struggle of poor whites. And in that type of situation scenario, you realize how evil this thing was. You realize that it wasn't just a fight to present Blacks and Latinos in a negative light. It was a push to present Blacks, Latinos, and the poor and the disadvantaged. And what we watched for years was them not being able to move out of their condition. What we watched for years was dysfunction. So when they had white people, they were the highest dysfunction. Black people might be the highest criminality, but the white people are the highest dysfunction. And it reminded us, or at least it reminded me, that there's a bigger conspiracy going on. It's like right now, we're talking about Black Lives Matter, da da da. You say Black Lives Matter. Yes, Black Lives Matter. But the other question is poverty still relevant? Let me give a shout out to my sister. What's going on, Reed? Mom's on the show, cracking jokes too. My point, as I wrap up, is cops had a run. It had a run of 32 years. And I'm going to say it had an uninterrupted run because it was on its way to being renewed. It wasn't renewed. We never knew what the statistics were for the numbers. I can't give you the Nielsen reports in terms of where they ranked. And I don't even think it matters. I think that culturally, it had an iconic place in society. Even at this point in time where the show is dead, I'm sitting up here worried like it won't be renewed moving forward. But my gosh, do you know how many episodes, brothers and sisters? I mean, in syndication, if anybody has a chance to do this, let's try and figure out how many episodes of Cops are in syndication. 33 years, 33 years, 32. I'm going to get a calculator just so you, this is my calculator. Let's say 26 shows a year times 33 years equals 858 shows. And let's say if they were syndicated by 5 people, that's just 5 television outlets, 4,290 episodes of Cops in perpetuity. So I guess I've been trying to get to this point about why I decided to have a Janazah for Cops. Because sometimes if you don't pay attention to the dead, you won't appreciate the living. And that's good and that's bad. I'm not saying the show Cops was bad. I'm saying it wasn't healthy. There were a lot of things I didn't like about Cops, but it educated me. Brothers and sisters, it educated me. It allowed me to look at police practices, and I said questions like, I wonder what happens when the camera's not on. And then we saw the Rodney King. That was the first Cops. Rodney King was the first episode of Cops. But then we saw the Rodney King. And then when you got away from it, you began to see some of the things that weren't on television. So, you know, we began to see things like Mr. Castillo. We began to see things ultimately like George Floyd. And it looked like television, except for it was real. It was real in a way that it disturbed us. Our moral core was disturbed. We could not sleep. We could not eat. And we asked questions about our own selves. How did we get to this point? How did we get to this point? Why are we saying these things? How did Cops get to be on the air 32 years? Surrounded by rational people, logical people, who in any other situation would stand up and protest, but this show participated and occupied our moral conscience for 32 years. So what I'm going to say now, book it. We have to be a lot more clear about what we're looking at. And we can't accept what folks are giving us. I told you when the show came on, I thought it was about information. Then I thought it was about education. And then it moved to entertainment. And then it moved to the cultural spaces whereby we see it, but you know what? It has a little bit of humor of it. It's got some music to it. What's the difference between the cop that killed George Floyd and the cops on Cops? Music. Music. Think about that one, brothers and sisters. And in a low voice, let's have a moment of silence for Cops. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna know? What you gonna do when your show is through? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when your show is through?